love to talk about transformation. I know we talked
Mhm.
a little bit about transformation on your podcast, and you've had an incredible life of just changing and rising from the ashes like Phoenix. And I'd love to hear, what does transformation mean to you in your life?
Oof. Um, well, I'll be honest, transformation is why I'm still here.
Ooh,
If
yeah.
I did not make that transformation on a personal level, I would not be here as of it's 2023, so 3 years ago, I had my exit plans.
Welcome back to the Dennison Download and the first episode of 2023. We hope you all survive the holidays and welcome to the new year. We are so excited to introduce you to our first guest of the new year, Deanna. Hi, what's up?
Hi.
Hi. We are
Welcome.
we are so excited to have you here, Deanna. Deanna McKellip is, I probably said that wrong. Please correct me if I did.
McKellip.
McKellip. Okay.
Mhm.
Is amazing. Deanna is not only a woman in tech, which is badass in and of itself, but she is also a podcast host. She hosts the Fragmenters podcast, which is incredible, highlighting other women in male dominated fields, which is just chef's kiss, amazing. And she and her husband are also entrepreneurs. And amazingly, they started their first business and has since opened other businesses in the last couple of years. So a lot of incredible transformations in your life, Deanna. I can't wait to dive in. That's amazing. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I know if anybody wants to hear Kara over on Fragmenters, she shared her wisdom there too. So just
Oh,
saying.
absolutely. So definitely go check out my episode. It launched, I think, in October of last year,
Yes.
right? Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. So we had a really, really great conversation there. So Deanna, we love to talk about transformation. I know we talked
Mhm.
a little bit about transformation on your podcast, and you've had an incredible life of just changing and rising from the ashes like Phoenix. And I'd love to hear, what does transformation mean to you in your life?
Oof. Um, well, I'll be honest, transformation is why I'm still here.
Ooh,
If
yeah.
I did not make that transformation on a personal level, I would not be here as of it's 2023, so 3 years ago, I had my exit plan. So,
Okay.
it is life and death to me. That is obviously the far end of the spectrum.
Sure.
Transformation to me is fun and exciting, and okay, I'll start from the beginning because when people hear that, they're like, "Oh, what a sappy blah, blah, blah." But at one
Fun and
point
exciting, though, right
yes.
after. So, gotta be wild. Go for it.
Yes. So, at one point, my I'll explain how much I've transformed. My husband wanted to throw me a surprise party, not with people, but just do something as a surprise. Take me somewhere, experience new things, which I absolutely love traveling and doing new things. But I was having panic attacks because I
Mm,
didn't know where we were going or what we were doing.
sure.
Surprise and change was terrifying.
Mm,
And now it's fun and exciting. So
okay.
that's why for me, it's such a huge pivotal thing.
Yeah.
And in order to get there, obviously, I had to go through a lot of different things. First and foremost, 100%, if you are struggling, especially this time of year, I get sad, the seasonal depression, not just sad.
Mm,
So, especially this time of year, after the holidays, you no longer have things looking forward to. Or if the holidays are rough, it gets even grayer, colder, and bleaker.
yeah.
So, 100% therapy.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
even if you don't think you need it, like you're like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about, or I had a good childhood, or there's really nothing going on. I'm just sad and it's ridiculous. Just go. The worst that's going to happen is you're going to spend a few dollars on yourself, talk to someone, and decide it's not for you. The best that can happen is it can literally change your life for the better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's number one. And that is what saved me. I am now with my third therapist. We are working on an eating disorder I realized I had
Okay.
that I didn't know I could have because I was fat. I'll be honest. I did
Sure.
not know I could have it. And it might be my night.
Naivety.
Thank
I
you.
get it. I
Whatever
get
that is.
it.
Or just my lack of education in it. But I was talking on Fragmenters to a health and nutrition coach. And afterwards, we were talking about it. I hired her, worked with her. I knew all the things, but I couldn't do it.
Mm, mm,
That's an eating disorder. If you know what to do and you cannot for the life of you follow it because you have I have a trigger warning, by the way, a binge and restrictive cycle. So
okay.
I would restrict myself to the point of starvation, having like 200 to 700 calories a day
Mm,
until I couldn't handle it anymore. And then I do like 3 to 5,000 in a
wow.
couple days
Okay.
and just keep going back and forth.
Mm,
So that is an eating disorder. And
yeah.
that is why I'm heavy. I've
Okay.
come to find out, even though I knew what to do, I exercise, I do all the things. That's it.
Mm,
So this is my latest adventure for transformation.
yeah. Tell me a little bit. Well, one, how long have you been doing this, the binging
Mhm.
and the restriction thing? And how did you and your therapist kind of work through that and just, or how are you rather working through that and
Right.
discovering it?
So it all starts back when I was in diapers. And I know it really does, though. I grew up in a pretty tumultuous childhood situation. There was drugs, there was alcohol. I think the first time I got drunk was with my parents and I was 8 years old.
Mm,
So it was not your average lifestyle.
okay.
And with that came a lot of traumas. And when you have people surrounded with addiction, you have issues. I had food insecurities, hygiene insecurities, a lot of other stuff, but I didn't eat a lot and
Mm,
I couldn't, and we couldn't, well, it wasn't afforded to us. So
sure.
it started when I was young.
Okay.
And then when I got a little older, I'm curvy. When I was at my lowest weight, it was after I had my daughter. I was 17 years old. I couldn't afford food. So where I worked, I got one free side when I worked.
Mhm.
So I'd have a side of fries a day and that was it. And
Oh,
I
wow.
was in housekeeping. So I worked my ass off,
Oh my
literally.
gosh. Yeah.
So I was like so skinny you could see bones and I was a size 10.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's what I mean by curvy. I'm
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
bigger. But that wasn't the thing in the 90s. In the 90s, what was the thing was, super skinny.
Yeah.
And so that's when the true anorexia started.
Mhm.
And then I got to the point where I wasn't eating so much that like my teeth were having issues and I was having skin issues. So then it transformed to bulimia. After I had my daughter, got into better working, finished high school, did all that, I was able to eat more, but I had never learned a proper way of eating. So I gotta say, it was forever.
Wow. That's fascinating. It's almost, sorry to keep going on to this, but it's almost like
No,
you were never taught about
right.
it. And so now is it almost a relearning process?
100%. So what I did, and you brought up something that I feel like I'm pretty good at explaining because a lot of people think they know that not everyone has the same upbringing and that common
Yeah.
sense, but there is a shared common sense. And I can tell you there's not because, like you said, I didn't learn how to eat properly. I mean,
Yeah.
there were times I went to my grandmother's house or friends' houses and I did experience, like fresh vegetables, fresh fruits. I didn't have that at home.
Oh,
So I had
yeah.
experience with it, but I
It
didn't
wasn't a
know
routine.
how to do it. And everyone's like, well, of course you know how to eat, but really you don't.
No.
I didn't learn how to clean until I was
Yeah.
30 years old.
Yeah.
Like when my boyfriend, when we first started getting serious and he came over and I was going to clean, I pulled out a mop, a sponge, a, a gallon of bleach, and Lysol wipes. And we're going to clean the whole house. And he was like, where's your bucket? Where's your toilet cleaner? I'm like, I don't need any of that. You put
Yeah.
water in the sink and you put the mop in, and he's like, "No, you don't."
Oh,
So,
yeah.
like, literally to the bare what you think is bare minimum to yourself is not.
Yeah.
It really and when I finally figured that out, it really helps me in situations personally. It helps me with my kids, especially because
Mhm.
sometimes you're like, "Motherfucker, I told you 700 times." But
Yeah.
they have so many things you're learning. It helps
Yeah.
put into perspective that it's not actually easily easy. And it's definitely helped me in my career moving up to I'm now in leadership. So in
Mhm.
my career working with my peers, especially since I kind of for a while had a chip on my shoulder because my first experience in IT was in a gold mine, and that was just really frustrating to work with men. So then I had this chip on my shoulder, and then I was just mean to men because of it.
Mm.
But when I finally figured out that portion, that it's not just me, that
Mhm.
everyone else, just because it's really common sense for me how to, script HTML and work with DNS and all of that stuff, it has to be learned for someone else.
Yeah.
And
That's
you
fascinating.
had asked me something else, and I just went on that tangent. So what was
No,
your original
I
question?
I love it. What I am really gathering from this is that, you know, it's eye-opening for me too, because I
Mhm.
think we all kind of walk around the world, right, with this assumed knowledge that everyone
Yes.
has this base level knowledge, right? We all know
Mhm.
how to walk, talk, eat, right?
Mhm.
Or
Bathe
clean,
properly.
bathe,
Mhm.
whatever. And it's really eye-opening to know and to hear it. And I appreciate you sharing. Thank you
Mhm.
that not every one of us has the same upbringing or has learned the basics to the same level or to a different level or whatever as each other. And what's fascinating is I look at you, Dina, and I'm like, wow, badass. Like, holy crap. Like HTML, scripting, woman in leadership, entrepreneur, like, holy moly. And to hear you say, I didn't even really learn how to clean properly or the basic rules of feeding, right? Until I
Mhm.
was older. And it's true when I think about my life too, there are some of those basic things that I didn't learn till I was older, but I can rattle off all this other stuff. And I make this joke all the time to Jack and to other people where I'm like, man, I feel so smart in some stuff and so dumb in the other things, right? But it really just truly is a good reminder to us that every person that we meet knows something we don't know, but
Mhm.
every person that we meet might not know what we know too. So it just goes back to being kind and to remembering, like you said, when you're teaching people or a leader, you don't know what they don't know. So sometimes that assumed knowledge might not be there as well either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely helps. Like I said, helps at home with the kids, helps in my relationship with communication because we had 2 different upbringings. For sure helps at work because
Yeah.
there are times I walk into a room and there's people who have 20 more years experience than I do. It's more rare now. I'm now at 17 years, so I'm
Nice.
getting up there,
Yeah.
but they have so much more experience, and I'll be talking to them about something and they're not getting it, and I am human, and I just wanna go, "Oh my god, are you kidding me? You don't understand this?" But their 30 some odd years of experience is not anything like what I've experienced, so it
Yeah.
helps me calm down and be like, "Bish, you couldn't even brush your teeth right. You can be
Yeah.
patient explaining this new
Yeah.
process."
Yeah. So I want to ask this question when it comes to kind of transformation and things. One of the things that I've been spending last year, 2022, learning or relearning is how to take care of myself because I like that self-care thing. I feel like I spent a lot of my life living in that survival mode, right? In that constant state of fight or flight, or, there's other ones now like fawning and whatever. But I just tend to find that I'm now relearning how to calm my nervous system down and actually live a healthy life and a fulfilled life instead of that constant survival mode. I want to start switching my life into thriving instead of surviving. And it almost
Mhm.
seems like you're kind of transforming into that, oh, hey, I don't need to survive. I've got it. Like I can take
Mhm.
care of myself. This is great. I'm not in that moment of, holy shit, I don't know where my food's going to come from. I don't know if this is a place where I'm safe anymore. I know I'm safe. Now I can actually switch into thriving. Is that kind of where you've been?
100%.
Mhm.
So I told you I had my strategy and plan figured out for 2020. Well, in 2019, I was in such a bad place that I didn't think I'd make it to that cutoff date. So that's why I entered therapy. And when I finally told my therapist, "Hey, just so you know, we just passed this date and that's why I went to you." She was like, "What the?" She was just like flabbergasted.
Yeah.
But that again, that really shows you just how much you could not know someone, because my therapist knew all the things and had no clue where I was. So
Mhm.
another reach out, get therapy, ask for help. But when I went to her first session, she was like, "Holy shit, you have cPTSD."
Mhm.
And I was like, "I can't have PTSD. I never went to war, I never did any of that." So cPTSD is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And if you haven't heard anything about it, essentially it happens to people in my life. It's childhood trauma induced, but it can happen to um like rape survivors, domestic violence survivors, kidnap survivors. It's something that it's traumas that are lived over and over for a certain amount of time that
Mhm.
actually rewires your brain.
Yeah.
And so when I found this out, first of all, I bawled because I'd never had a reason. I just was told I was dramatic. I was told that
Mhm.
I was too much. I didn't know why. So when I finally saw it, I was like, "Oh my god, there is help. There's something for me." I just cried and it was really eye-opening. But what we did was EMDR because I was um PTSD. I don't remember the numbers specifically, but let's say it's out of 100. You have your triggers, I was like, I'd have night terrors, I'd wake up screaming, all of the different things that happen. Out of like 100, I was in the 80s. I was like way up there, had almost every symptom. I was stressed the fuck out. So we started EMDR, which is, I don't know the acronym. I try to remember that one, just escapes me every time. It's like eye
Eye
movement.
rapid movement.
Yeah,
I
it's like
yeah.
eye movement, rapid, desensitive, desent, that word.
Yeah. We get it.
Yeah.
That one, yeah. Mhm.
And essentially, it's a way to work in a safe place with your therapist to retrain those neural pathways so that you're not always expecting the worst. Like
Yeah.
if I got in a slight argument with my partner, my nervous system felt like I was being punched in the face. Like there was no in between. I was either everything's fine and hunky dory, or I was being stabbed.
Yeah.
There was no a little tiny disagreement would send me spiraling into deep depression.
Mhm.
So, being able to work through that and first of all knowing that it wasn't my fault, that I wasn't just a dramatic bitch like I'd always heard was so good. Getting on Prozac, the right dosage, key.
Mm.
Um, and then working through the EMDR, I think after a year and a half was when we did my final test and I'm in remission.
Okay.
So it never goes away.
Yeah.
Those were super grooved in there. They can come back if I don't continuously take care of myself. But it took about a year and a half of EMDR to get through that. Then pandemic happened. Everybody's losing it. Trying to keep my head together, trying to keep kids in school, doing all the things that everyone had to do. After that started feeling somewhat normal, that's when I started my podcast and had that conversation with Kirsten and was like, "Oh, there's a lot, there's some more trauma there that I didn't even register, and now I'm working with I'm pretty woo. I'm just saying. So
Yeah.
talk therapy is good and I do a little bit of it, but like EMDR worked really well and now I'm doing IFS, which is integrated family systems.
Yeah.
And essentially it's a meditation based. That's how I would say. That's not how they explain it, but in my experience it's more of a meditation. Close your eyes, get in the zone, go inside, and then you interact with all the different parts of you. And your
Mm,
parts are your little toddler self that was hungry, or,
yeah.
the fat kid in school that was made fun of, and just try to make yourself an integrated family.
Yeah.
And it has been that's how I've been working on my eating disorder
Yeah.
on the therapy and woo side.
Love
On
it.
the actual side, on the not actual, but on the lived experience side, initially, I forced myself to have 3 meals a day. It was a must, and let me tell you, I cried sometimes when I was eating because I did not want to. I tried to purge and made myself stop. So it was that's
Mm,
how heavily ingrained this was, and I didn't even know it existed.
yeah.
So that was my initial. After 6 months of eating 3 meals a day, minimum, I could have snacks, I could whatever. I gained a shit ton of weight, obviously, because I'd never done it before. But I got to where I didn't have the cravings to hurt
Mhm.
myself anymore, especially working with a therapist. Hurt myself as in restrict
Yeah.
or eat to the point where I'm miserable. Those were
Yeah.
those were how I caused myself pain. So working with a therapist, doing the regular eating, now we're I'm learning how to listen to my body. Like I've never
Mm,
had that hunger and I've never had that full.
mm,
I just when I had food, I ate it, and when I didn't have food, that was just the way it was.
mm,
So now I'm finally learning to, "Oh, no, I'm bored. That's not hunger,"
mm.
"Why am I feeling discomfort?" "Oh, that's hunger." So I'm again, something that most people understand, I'm relearning how to listen to what my body is saying, whether I'm hungry or not,
Yeah.
and working on the intuitive eating. So that's
Yeah.
that's where I'm at so far.
I love that. That brings me a lot, the intuitive eating and the listening to your body. It reminds me a lot of what Jack and I talk about, which is kind of living intentionally.
Mhm.
When we were in South Florida and severely burnt out and stressed out, it was almost like uh, we were kind of at the whim of whatever desire came along or whatever was there, Starbucks, sure, fast food, whatever. And we gained a lot of weight mainly because we couldn't discern between boredom or stress, or we just ate, and it was more a convenience thing and a more of a we weren't intentionally listening into what we needed or taking care of ourselves because we were so just burn and take it,
Yep.
all that other stuff. And so what I really loved about what you were saying is, one, it sucks feeling um so burnt out and so stressed, and having the PTSD and the eating disorder, or the CPSD and the eating disorder on top of that. It's tough. And you can feel a lot of different ways about yourself, right? And what I loved
Mhm.
about your story is that you made a decision. One, you had made one decision, and then you made another decision, which was to get help and to tell
Mhm.
your therapist. And the overarching theme that I'm getting from your story is that it's never too bad. There's always ways to get help, right? From therapy to EDMR to IFS. I've done NLP, right? To tapping, to we actually just recorded an episode about using your tools, right?
Mhm.
And there's so many tools to help, even if it's just a minuscule amount. Those minuscule amounts day by day add up and they can do massive amounts of things, like reprogramming, right?
Yeah.
Really detrimental programming that you have gained throughout your year, you can act, or your years, right, can actually be reprogrammed to have a healthier, better, more fulfilling life, and to get you out of that survival mode. And there's hope out there. So anyone who's listening to Dina's story, and you're feeling that way, or you've had any of those experiences or something similar, don't do it alone. Get help, get therapy, get someone um who can listen and to work with you through this, for sure.
Right. And you are worth someone's time.
Yeah.
That was one thing I told myself all the time. But you are worth the time. It doesn't just that's it. You're worth it. It
Yeah.
whatever you are telling yourself, or it's not you, it's that part of you that says it. But
Yeah.
whatever it's saying, it's a fucking liar, and you are worth it. And it doesn't matter who you reach out to, you will be you can get better.
Yeah. I love that. Let's take a quick break. I want to read our little ad, and then I want to come back and I want to hear, you've gone through a couple of years of some tough work, and I want to kind
Yeah.
of hear the other side of it and how we're using some of our transformation in all the stuff that you're doing. So let's take a
Oh yeah.
quick break, and we'll be right back. If you're ready for a transformation and you're not sure where to start, Jack and I, we always suggest to take a look at where your money comes from. Your career funds the rest of your life. And if you're feeling burnt out, unfulfilled, or stagnated in your career, well, that can easily start to bleed over to the rest of your life. Most high achievers and leaders, they're great at what they do, but when it comes to finding that next level or a company that aligns with their values, attempting a job search can be frustrating. The traditional job search of submitting your resume to job boards only yields about a 2% ROI when it comes to interviews, and it can leave job seekers feeling anxious, rejected, or feeling imposter syndrome. At OCS, we want to help transform your job search. We help by giving you the branding on your resume and LinkedIn profile that sets you apart as the industry leader or professional that you are. But we don't stop there. We give you the proven strategies to empower you to be the leader that you are in your career within your job search by getting you directly connected to decision makers and teaching you how to tell your impactful story. Book your free consultation with either myself or Jack at bit.ly/callocs. That's bit.ly/callocs. On this free call, we're going to dive deeper with you into your career goals, show you how we can help support you in achieving them, and transform your mindset and give you invaluable skills that you can use throughout the rest of your career. The first step to the next chapter of your career is just a couple clicks away. Book your free consultation with us now at bit.ly/callocs. That's bit.ly/callocs. All right, we are with Deanna, overall badass. She is a woman in tech, a leader woman in tech. She is also an entrepreneur. She's the host of the Fragmenters podcast, and she shared at the top of this episode her transformation, overcoming cPTSD and an eating disorder. Deanna, I want to hear, how have you used, and you did share a little bit at the beginning, how you use some of your transformations to help in your job, but I want to hear a little bit more about some of the other, I'm not going to say passion projects, because these are big projects. Your business and your podcast. How have you used your transformations to help transform some of the other lives that you've touched, you've been around, that your employees? I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about what you're doing and where you're going.
Well, it always starts at home.
Yeah.
So, at home, I am a much better mother than I was to my kids because confrontation was so awful for me. That included with my kids. So I had a couple spoiled little turds. I'll admit it.
You're so funny.
I was always the good cop. And then when I was single, there was only a good cop. So it got kind of rough. And what I've learned is that I was not teaching them the life lessons they need to be adults. If you have a kid and you just give them, give and give and give, and you see them fall and you go and catch them and you make sure they never fall, or you pick them up and then you carry them around for the next 2 years. I'm talking metaphorically. My 14-year-old is 5 inches taller than me, so I'm not physically carrying him, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They will not be able to cope with their life because they've not learned at the ages that they're supposed to how to deal with conflict and how to fight urges and all of that stuff. So I've been able to, before they were in adulthood, and I fucked them too royally, try to seriously, it's everyone's worst nightmare. But I've been able to adjust that and help them more into being better people for themselves and everyone around them. So that's first and foremost. My husband tells me all the time he's a better man because he's with me, and I feel the same for him. We have strengthened our bond and our communication so much. I'm telling you, even if you just go to therapy and you're like, I don't need this, but I need to learn how to communicate,
Yeah.
just interacting with them and knowing how to ask questions better helps your relationships. It just does. I learned how to make everything me. So instead of saying, you're being a dick, saying, when you said this, I felt like you were being a dick. It's totally different the way it impacts, even though you're saying the same thing.
I get it. I get it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's definitely helped in that regard. He actually is now in therapy because he was always like, I didn't have a bad childhood. I don't know what to talk about now. And after seeing me go from wanting to do the deed to now this, super confident. I mean, not perfect, obviously, but I'm super confident in myself. I take care of myself every day in some regard, journaling, working out. You can see I get my nails done. That's one of
Welcome.
the things that I do just for me.
Mhm.
I dress better. I do makeup when I want to, not because I feel like I have to or I don't. He's seen all this. He's like, I think I'll give it a shot. And he's already feeling different because of going. So,
That's
he
interesting.
yeah.
Jack, that actually happened for Jack too. Do you want to share?
Yeah, that was exactly what happened. I kind of watched you going through therapy when we got together. It was never something I ever felt I needed. We had similar conversations about childhood and kind of talked about how I felt my childhood was good, and I never looked back on anything negatively. But what I really realized that once I kind of got over myself and just tried it was that I I didn't have a lot of the tools, like you said, Dina, that
Mhm.
you're trying to teach your kids so that they can be good, well-rounded adults. And I didn't know how to process the emotions that I was feeling. I would just kind of compartmentalize and push them down and move on.
Yep.
And
I
I
think a
got really
lot of
good at it.
I think a lot of men are good at compartmentalizing too.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
I think we're probably some of the best at it. And so just because we're not necessarily told that we're allowed to process emotions or given ways to do it healthily. So
Mhm.
typically what you see men doing processing emotions, it goes to anger, it goes to rage, it goes to these bursts, these outbursts because they hold it in to the point where they can't anymore. And then unfortunately that's what happens. And that for me, I noticed was coming out in probably more passive aggressive ways. I was probably a little bit more passive aggressive in the sense that I was feeling something, didn't know how to process how I was feeling. And so instead of saying what I was feeling, I would just be crappy to the people around me.
Mhm.
The therapy, you've been in it for over a year now, and it's been wildly helpful. How about for your man?
So he's only been for a couple months, but already there's a transformation. He's
Yeah.
still in the beginning stages, so it's still really rough for him,
Yeah.
but I know where he's at. Thankfully, I've lived it, so I'm a little bit more patient. Not as patient as I should be. I'll try I know you're hurting right now and blah blah. And then after the second or third, I'm like, no, you can't talk to me like this. I know you're hurting, but no.
Yeah.
So I'm not perfect, but
None of us
it's
are.
already helping.
Yeah.
And we communicated really well before, but now, like I said, you start learning instead of yous, you have eyes, and it's helping even more. And
Yeah.
his major issue is the same, Jack, and I think it is fed into our boys and men way too much that you should not show your more emotions. You don't want to be a pussy. You don't want to, you don't want to throw like a girl. You don't want to cry like a girl. You don't want to be like a girl. It's just you're surrounded by it. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad you were able to get into it and feel better too.
Yeah. I'm glad.
It's been awesome. It's been very helpful. And I tell all my friends, anybody who's dealing with something, hey, maybe this is something you want to try. I don't necessarily think it's for everybody because I've done it in the past and it didn't work for me then. But also, you have to be in the right place. You have to be willing to work on yourself. You have to be willing to think past that thought of, no, everything's fine. I'm good. Right, that surface level mindset that we're all taught to kind of put out there kind of when we go to high school.
Right.
Kind of
Well,
what you mentioned, Dina, is that your husband's in that tough spot, right? Like therapy is not going to be, oh great, I had a session and look, I'm healed, everything's great, I feel amazing. It's the tough work. It's the, hey, are you willing to scratch the surface and go underneath and see maybe what is going on, why you're reacting sometimes like that to sometimes benign things that maybe other people don't react that way. Why are you reacting that way, right? And it gets tougher sometimes before it gets better. And to Jack's point, you have to be willing and ready to do that work. Or Jack, to your other point, is maybe that first therapist wasn't for you. Sometimes you have to feel comfortable in that container, and if you're not, try another therapist. You don't have to go with the first one. It's like dating.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
And you will not hurt their feelings. I'm on my third.
Yeah.
So 3 therapists, and you're not breaking up with them. They're not going to be, you are important, but they're not going to be devastated and heartbroken if you say, "Hey, I'm not really getting anything anymore. I'm going to go to someone else."
Yeah.
It's kind of like rehab.
Yeah.
They want you to leave and never see you again. Not because they don't like you, but because then you've healed and you've succeeded, or you're on to the next step.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
definitely be willing to break up with your therapist.
Yeah, I love that.
But another thing that I had to do was, and I think it's part of what Jack was saying, is radical self-responsibility. I, growing up the way I did, was a victim, and I was a victim. Things that I experienced, no one should have to experience. But when you're a victim for so long, you get a victim mentality. And that means it's always someone else's fault. And I lived my life like that for a long time. Everything happened to me. Everything was against me, even good things, something bad was going to happen afterwards because I was always going to be a victim because I always was. And when I was able to have radical self-responsibility, and I don't mean to say if you were raped, it was your fault. That is not self-responsibility. What it is acknowledging this horrible, terrible thing happened to me, and I am responsible to get past it. That's what it is. And when I was able to process that and realize that once you hit a certain age, your childhood, your parents aren't to blame anymore because you have the responsibility to learn what you weren't taught when you were younger. So once I was able to do that, that's when you can scratch through the surface. And that's when you can say, yes, this was horrible, awful, but I'll use work again. Work is way easier to talk about than like some of the other stuff. So I was having an issue with a coworker. He was misogynist, is probably still. He retired, so I'm not sure. But it was really hard to work with him. He would not listen to me. He would talk down to me, and he was a really nice guy. He was just fed this his entire life, and that's how he was. So I got to the point where I didn't work with him unless I absolutely had to. And when I went in, I had a fortress around me, not even barriers. I came in already on the offense and defense, came in with a biting tongue. And once I started therapy and healing, and it went from getting myself, bathing and living again, and I started seeing around, I walked into that and heard my tone and was like, oh shit, I am part of the problem. Like, this isn't him. That may have been how it started. But after 2 years of working with him, I have egged this on. Like, I see how I responded like this, and he became more, and I became more, and we just can't work together. And I had to humble myself, forgive myself for sure, because that's where I get stuck a lot. But forgive myself for doing it and saying, okay, that was me. It doesn't have to be me. And the next interaction I had, he was a total dick, and I was nice as can be. And I was like, it's because you were a bitch before. You got to get past it. The second time, same reaction. The third time, we worked pretty well together. So he had to realize that it was happening. So even if someone is a huge jerk to you, some of it could be you. And you have to look at yourself and be like, how am I hurting this situation? Sometimes they're just an asshole, sometimes you're doing absolutely nothing wrong, but 99% of the time I found a way that I could change and at least know for myself that I've done everything to make this situation easy.
I love that. I think that's such a perfect place to wrap up. Radical self-responsibility is such a huge thing for Jack and I. I think that victim mentality was something that was brought up to me in therapy as well. And it's really easy to fall into that victim mentality, right? Because shit happens. Like, let's be real. I mean, especially over the last couple of years with the pandemic and all this other stuff, it's very easy to fall into the why me, right? And I've seen people live that way. I also lived that way for a very long time. And like my dad dying, or I was also date raped and things like that too. And what Deanna is saying is those things are going to happen, right? Life is going to happen. And that doesn't mean that you are not a victim of things happening to you. What she's saying is it is then your responsibility to determine what are you going to do after that, right?
Yep.
Because we've all heard the saying, you can't change anyone else but yourself, right? And that, for instance, my date rape, right? I could, and I did spend a couple of years being afraid of men, not dating, holding myself up in my apartment, not going out with friends, really not liking myself, right? And that was a choice that I did, but I lost years off of my life, off of my social life, off of my self-confidence. And it wasn't until I flipped it around and became radically self-responsible for my actions to not let that control who I was moving forward, my confidence, etc. And I decided to work through that with therapy, etc., and all that other stuff. I decided to become responsible for how I was going to move forward from that and heal from that. So what Deanna is really saying is when things happen to you, you get a choice. You get to either let that thing define you, or you get to become empowered and move from that, learn from it, heal from it, etc.
Absolutely. I like to, I'm just going to get in here
Please.
for one more second.
Yeah.
How I reframed it is nothing ever happens to me anymore. It happens for me. So if something bad is happening, if something bad is happening to me, I have to sit back and be like, what is a lesson I'm supposed to learn? It's happening for me to learn something to better myself. Now, what is it? When you're in the throes of it, when you have someone dying, it's really hard to do. And sometimes you just have to come back to it when you're at a better place. But when I start getting that victim mentality, why is this happening to me? Why does this always happen to me? Blah, blah, blah. Life is horrible. I know something's happening for me, to really dig down and figure out how to change and
Yeah.
transform, I guess,
I
so
love
that
that.
I
Yeah.
can grow from it.
Yeah. We just did an episode a couple weeks ago about the win or learn mentality. It's
Mhm.
hey, if you're feeling, why is this happening to me? If you can't get to the why is this happening for me yet, the question in between was, what can I learn from this? Right.
Yep.
And I really like that a lot. Because everything's a lesson. Everything really
Yes.
is. So Deanna, thank you so much for coming on. Oh my gosh, and for telling your story. I can already tell that this is going to help a lot of people, and
I hope so.
it was eye-opening for me for sure. Is there any final parting words that you would like to share with our listeners?
I really think I can't peak myself for listen that it's happening for you, not to you.
I
So
know that was a good
I
one.
don't think so. But
Okay.
if you like hearing ladies in male dominated fields,
Yes.
you can always listen to Fragmenters.
Absolutely. So, where can you find Deanna online? She is the host, the amazing host of the Fragmenters podcast. She is on every podcasting place that you can basically find the Fragmenters podcast, right?
Oh
Cool.
yeah.
She's also on Instagram, on Facebook. So, check out the Fragmenters podcast on those as well. If you are in Idaho, where can you find her if you need your dry cleaning done?
Yep, I'm in Idaho Falls. I mean, technically a suburb, but whatever. It's Idaho Falls. So we're in East Idaho. We sell wine barrels with McKellman's, just saying. They're used wine barrels, or you can get dry cleaning done at Teton Cleaners.
Amazing. Amazing. She is a badass. Thank you so much for coming on. For our listeners, we are on Instagram at the Dennison Download, on Facebook, the Dennison Download podcast. Check us out on all major podcast streaming sites. And from our family to yours, have a great rest of your week.